Hello, everybody. Welcome to live. Oh my God, if I don't change this, Taylor, Jeff is going to throw a fit. Wait for it. There it is. Live with Vince Russo and Taeler Hendrix. You know, Taylor, I got to tell you something, man, right off the bat. Listen, you got to help me out with this. I'm old school. Taylor, I'm going to be 62 in a couple of weeks. I'm old school. So I come from a school where if you had a beautiful guest on the show, I would use that as here's what I would say. Ladies and gentlemen, the beautiful, vivacious, brilliant, creative. These are the words I would use to introduce Taeler Hendrix. And but Taylor, in my world, when you told a woman they were beautiful, like that was a compliment, and they took it as a compliment. I swear to God, my head is so messed up from this world today. I don't even know if I can refer to a woman as beautiful. I mean, is it acceptable for me to use that as one of the adjectives for you?
With me, I don't mind at all, but I am an old soul. I do not fit into the postmodernist F-word constraints of society. But when I mean F-word, I'm not talking about a swear. Right. Trying to be, I don't even think politically correct knows what politically correct is anymore. I don't know if anyone else is with me on that. It's so hard to keep up from like 1 hour to the next and everything like that. So for me, it's not a problem, but I have seen other women really just lash out. And it's, it's just the subtle art of being just less offended and more open to polite discourse, I think, is what we need at this point.
I'm just like, listen, I am we're not going to get into this, but, I am a firm believer in God. And when, God creates a beautiful woman, oh, that's a beautiful woman. But, today it's like, oh, my God. Listen, Taylor, before we get started, man, I want to talk about a pet peeve I have. And then I'm going to ask you to give me one of your pet peeves.
Oh, okay.
Taylor, I am sure you and I have never spoken about this before. I am sure you are a lot like me when it comes to this. Do you love to frequent the thrift store?
Oh my gosh, that was my bread and butter growing up. We didn't have a lot of money, so we did thrift stores all the time.
Do you still go as an adult?
Oh yes. Yeah, yes. That is in my DNA. I love that. That's one of my favorite things to do. You never know what you're going to find. And honestly, I think I don't want to rattle on too much, but I don't see the need to spend money like everybody does. That's how you end up very, very poor, is making poor financial decisions. And in wrestling, I always looked down on myself because all of these women had all of these name brand, super nice things, and I couldn't afford that kind of stuff. So, I always had secondhand things or, stuff that wasn't as expensive as theirs. But then later on, I realized, I was like, oh, maybe it's not a bad thing that I can do my own hair and my own nails and I buy things, secondhand. Maybe that's not a bad thing. Maybe it's not something to look down your nose at all. Oh, yeah. And ever since then, I've been so much happier.
I get all my clothes at thrift store. No doubt. I can't even remember the last time I got a piece of clothing at a department store. I can't even remember. But here's one of my pet peeves. And then I'm going to you're going to give me yours.
Okay.
So, this morning prior to doing this show, I took a ride to my local thrift store in Colorado. We have ARC thrift stores. So I took a ride to the thrift store. I'll never understand this for as long as I live. So I go to the CD area. Okay. And I see they got a CD there that I was interested in. Okay. So Taylor, I open it up. Somebody stole the CD. Now, at a thrift store. Yeah, I mean, bro, come on. Like, does it really get any lower than that? But here's my pet peeve. Taylor, the CD itself literally fits exactly in the CD case. Why are they stealing the CD and just not stealing the whole case? Does that make any sense to you? The case is as big as the CD. Why are you not stealing the case and just taking the CD?
Well, here's the thing. Hearing that, it also could have been someone who just didn't take stock in their things, and they could have potentially just carelessly donated it without the CD ever being in it. There's no real way to know unless the store actually caught the theft on camera.
That's a good point. That's a good point.
But I will say I've tried to buy press-on nails recently because that's what I do. I don't like to spend $100 every 2 weeks on nails. And I actually bought some, and I went to go into the pack to see in the little spot that they keep all the extra nails that aren't on display, and there were none. So someone literally had to carefully open the box of press-on nails, and they had to pull the plastic case out, take the spare nails, but they left all the display nails behind, and then carefully put it back in and use the little tape seal and put the tape seal back on. I was like, and the amount of time that you could have done that, not that I condone this, you could have put it in your pocket, because even that box is smaller than a CD. It's probably about the size of, your basic Android phone.
Right.
So I don't know. I just think there's not really as many consequences to theft now. I don't know the specifics on the law, but I think the stores actually get in more trouble by reporting it than the people actually doing the theft now. So I think if it's less than $1,000, they don't really prosecute anymore. So that's just giving free reign for lawlessness as far as flash mob thefts and everything else.
You're giving a lot of ideas to the people in the chat room, Taylor. So, all right, listen, Taylor, everybody, this show is about, Taylor is, me and Taylor have a lot in common. Listen, I'm not going to lie to you. Taylor is a lot more hipper and cooler than me. I could be Taylor's grandfather, let alone a father. But Taylor and I love pop culture. We love it. That's what, Taylor has a show on russosbrand.com. She's always talking about pop culture. She's all over it, on top of it. So with that said, Taylor, we got a couple of topics today, but I've got to hit the topic. Lisa Marie Presley, man.
I saw last night. My goodness.
54 years old. Yeah. Well, you know what? Taylor, she was at the Golden Globes, I believe, the night before, because the Elvis movie was up for an award, and they actually interviewed her. And Taylor, she was out of it. Hey, listen, man, you and I have been around thousands of wrestlers, and we know when there's a problem. She was having a problem just the night before. And I'm watching her, and the way she looked, I'm like, this ain't good. And then sure enough, the next day, first of all, I want to say this. Lisa Marie Presley was the only child of Elvis Presley. Bro, many years ago, my God, I owned my video store. It had to be back in the 80s already. But, Lisa Marie wanted to break into music. And she released her first CD, Taylor. I don't know if you've ever heard it or not. It was great. I mean, she was absolutely great, and she was talented. And I'm like, wow, listen, I know it's the Presley name, but she's really, really, really good. Man, Taylor, we go down that road of abuse and drugs and alcohol, and the next thing we know, here we are at 54 years old. But as I'm really thinking about her today, God, Taylor, how do you live a life in the shadow of such an iconic, legendary figure? I can't imagine what it would be like to be the daughter of the king, Elvis Presley, and that's who you're identified as for your entire life. I can't imagine, and I'm sure that probably had a lot to do with the substance abuse.
I don't think just that. I think I would add an additional follow-up point to that. Is not just being identified as the king's daughter. It's also the fact that he was taken so soon. You know, when you lose a parent so tragically, suddenly, and unexpectedly, the way that she did, that leaves a void for any child, but it's most especially as a young girl. You know, I really do think that there is something to be said for a great, competent, loving, well put together, you know, father being in the home. And we have to also remember that in the way that he was taken from her so soon, I've seen a lot of people make jokes about that and stuff. But at the end of the day, no matter the circumstances of how he passed, that was a father that was taken from his child. And so you have to kind of pay some respect to that, as well as the fact that she had to live under that, you know, luminous, ominous umbrella of expectation that she felt, possibly, we don't really know, but she felt that possibly she could not live up to. That doesn't mean she was devoid of talent. It doesn't mean her death is any less tragic. It just means that, you know, some of those cards weren't put in the right deck as far as how life happens, and you really don't have any control over that. And that really sucks for her and her family. And to me, it's also unnatural. I don't think any parent should have to bury a child. Just there's something unnatural about that.
Yeah. You know, Taylor, listen, let me address this first. And I forgot to mention this, Taylor. What this is this is called a donation or a super sticker. If somebody likes the show, they can donate because they know you and we're trying to make a living here. That's all we're trying to do. We're trying to make a living. AJ Rodriguez, $20 donation. And he wants to know, hello, Vincent Taylor. Question for Vince. Did you happen to go to CBGB's and or Lemoore back in the day? And if you did, how was that experience like? I'm 34 and digging into New York bands like Ramones, Talking Heads, and Blondes. I freaking wish, AJ. I absolutely wish. And the bands that you are talking about, I love them all. Are those bands on your radar, Taylor? Blondie, tell me.
Yes, I had such an awesome cultural upbringing with my mom, Mama Hendrix, as I refer to her all the time on my podcast and my YouTube channel. She was so awesome. So I was a kid in the 90s, right? And dating myself. But I had this really cool 60s, 70s childhood, really. Like, I just giggled with my mother the other day. You know, I said, thank you so much for giving me the childhood that I had. You know, I had that childhood where you're like, oh, Mom, I think I have asthma. And she would be like, nah, we can't afford asthma. Or, you know, I come in with a scraped knee and she'd just be like, rub some dirt on it. You're fine, kid. You know, I had that awesome childhood, you know. And so with her, I got all of these things. Like, I grew up watching Godzilla, you know, the originals. I grew up listening to, she had the Clash CDs and, of course, Blondie and Metallica and the Ramones. And all this really awesome stuff, like the Mama Cass Elliott and so forth. So definitely loved the Ramones, and the Ramones led me to the Clash. And my mom used to always play the Clash, and of course the Talking Heads. And those are just so good. I'm so excited that was brought up.
You know, Taylor, and again, anybody, you guys want to, you know, donate, you know, send a super sticker. We really, really, really appreciate that because, this is what, we do for, hey, listen, me and Taylor are hustlers. We hustle, bro. We hustle. Taylor, you just brought up something, I swear to God, that is a lost art. And I'm sure this was going on as well. You know, you said you were a child of the 90s. I want to hope this was still going on. In the 90s, were you scraping up your knees every single day when you went out to play? Like, were your knees constantly bleeding? Did you constantly have scabs on your knees because as a child you actually went out and played? Because, bro, I swear, man, I'm begging. I am begging, Taylor, to look out my front door and see kids playing. That's all we did. What was that still a thing in the 90s, Taylor?
Oh, yeah. I didn't grow up with video games, really. That was more my sister who came along about 7.5 years after me. So I'm not tech savvy. I was, you know, playing with Barbies, and I was going outside and making my own version of Disney movies like Cadet Kelly and, you know, all of these other things. I was, you know, playing on rope swings. That's how I broke my first bone in my body. You know, I played sports. I was a huge jock. I always joke with my mom that I was the girliest son that she never had because I played all kinds of sports. I was not fashion forward. We weren't allowed to wear makeup. My mother was not focused on us having looks. She was focused on us building substance and becoming, unique little mini individuals that would grow up one day, So I was into wrestling and bowling and taekwondo and softball and football and all of these different things. So yeah, we were still doing that. We had the 90s version of when the street lights come on, your butt better be home. That was kind of like our version of that, where it was like, as soon as you heard your mom call through the window, your butt better be coming home. If not, heads are going to roll.
And you were like literally you were milking every second of daylight, right? And then when it got dark, you're looking for a street light. Like Matt DeVenti, $5. He's a brand member, $5 donate. I am wearing his shirt, Taylor. He sent me this shirt. Look at that. Look at that. Matt, he's a musician, Taylor. Matt, he's a musician.
Awesome.
Yeah, thank you very, very, very much, Matt. Taylor, I want to say this, and then we're going to move on to our first subject. But I got to tell you, we were talking about Elvis and Lisa Marie. Taylor, my dad yesterday turned 92 years old.
Oh, what a blessing that is. Congratulations.
So I was just talking about Lisa Marie and, the curse of Elvis, the king, being her dad. Okay. My dad's 92 years old. He lives in Ocala, Florida. He calls me yesterday. Yeah, I'm in Colorado. He calls me on the phone yesterday on his 92nd birthday. He can't find his teeth. And I'm like, what? I don't understand. Why are you calling me halfway across the country? I don't know exactly. Did you look for the teeth? Yeah, I look for the teeth everywhere. I even looked under the car seat. I'm like, how would a man's teeth wind up? But I just want you to know, this is what my father was not Elvis Presley. This is a man that I have to deal with, Taylor.
You know what, though? Honestly, if my parents can make it to 92, I will be so happy. I will happily take care of them. My family has this unfortunate where they passed away quite young. So I remember when my grandmother passed away, I was 5 years old, and I remember that whole entire experience. So for me, I would consider that such a huge blessing, even if it's annoying or inconvenient. Like, to me, 92, imagine all the things and all the changes that he has seen. Like,
I always, Taylor, I every week I pick his brain about back in the day. I mean, oh my gosh, the stories he tells me. Listen, we got another one, Taylor. One Man Army 2, Electric Boogaloo. Do you remember that movie, or is that way before your time?
I have seen that. My mother knows that. And when they made a reference to it on Hotel Transylvania, I was so excited. The Electric Boogaloo.
Great movie, by the way. Just got back from the field yesterday, charging barbed wire 8 times for a live fire exercise in the Hawaiian. What? Listen, wow. Man, that doesn't sound very safe. All right, listen, Taylor, I want to talk to you about this.
Okay.
Because I love this. I love this, and this is right in your wheelhouse.
Okay.
For those of you that don't know and might be seeing Taylor for the first time, Taylor, what I don't want to say still. You're not still. You were a professional wrestler, or now and then do you still take a match here and there?
I am still an active wrestler. I just I've learned the value in quantity over quality and choosing the environments that I want to be involved with and protecting my energy, if that makes sense. My body is my own, and no one's going to pay for it or live in it but me. So I'm much more selective these days, and I don't believe anyone truly retires from wrestling. Like, you'll hear, oh, so-and-so retired, and then within a year they're doing something related to wrestling. And so I just don't believe that anybody truly retires.
Are you trying to tell us you're going to be having a match at 73? Is that what you're trying to tell us, Taylor?
No, okay. No, I never wanted that to be my reality. And I wish that more young wrestlers would realize that that is not a realistic reality, and to potentially make better decisions about the quality of life that they could have with life after wrestling, which is something that we've talked about on my podcast, as well as with NFL Super Bowl champions and how they view life after football, because you don't always get to pick and choose on your terms when your professional athlete career ends.
Yeah.
That window of opportunity is so small.
Before we go forward, I want to say we got a police officer in the room. I call him Police Officer Troy. Police Officer Troy. Troy throws all the riffraff out and the troublemakers. Troy, will you please take this Iraq character and flush him down the toilet, Troy? Please get rid of this Iraq character. All right, Taylor, let me get back to you. Listen, Taylor, I'm going to give you a little bit of history, but not much. I was always an advocate of women in wrestling. And I'll tell you why I was always an advocate of women in wrestling. Because they fought so hard to get their piece of the pie, when the reality of it was they were never going to get their piece of the pie because it was the good old boys club. I could tell you that firsthand. We hear, sometimes people will say, Vince McMahon is racist, this and that. No, bro, I never saw that in Vince, but here's what I saw all the time, man. I saw sexism all the time. It's the good old boy network. God forbid a woman takes my spot. So I was always so pro women wrestler. Very, very close with China. And I say this, no problem. I have no problem saying this. The wrestling business killed China. I mean, it is that simple. Some people may have been able to handle what she went through. She wasn't built to handle what the wrestling business put her through. So listen, the women, in my opinion, have always kind of been like a victim of the system, fighting for every crumb. I love today. I love it, and we've just started to see it. I love people like Lana, people like Mandy Rose, people like Sasha Banks now. Finally calling their own shots, knowing they have other options, not being a slave to a system that is never going to treat them equally. Now they are out. Now they are real free agents. They're seeing there's money outside of professional wrestling, and I am thrilled to see this for these females. What do you think about this?
Oh, Vince, that is such a loaded, multifaceted question, because unlike yourself, I am actually a woman in the professional wrestling industry. And so there is so much to unpack there. And I know we cannot spend this whole episode. So anyone watching this, whether it be it live or after the fact, just know there is so much more that I can say and go into a bullet pointed, in-depth analysis of this entire thing. So do not come at me with your negativity because you don't like one thing I said because I didn't get the chance to elaborate. So here's what I think. I love today in wrestling, and I don't. There are a lot of people that have not earned their opportunity in the business, and they have this take mentality, but they're not giving. Okay. And the business is made for people that actually want it and actually worked hard for it. But they also they simultaneously forget that the business owes you nothing. Okay. The business will go on with or without you. Okay. We are nothing to the business. Okay. The business is the way it is for that power dynamic. Okay. And when you disrupt that power dynamic, you disrupt the good old boys club, that status quo, you become the enemy of the business, even though you're trying to make the business better for everyone. Because let's face it, a lot of people during various different times in wrestling tried to act like the men were the sole problem, and they're not. The men are not the sole problem in this industry. Women are just as much a part of the problem as the men are, but a lot of women don't want to have a serious conversation and try to evaluate that and try to understand why. You know, when you willingly go into a system that is skewed, you can't sit there and complain because you knowingly did that. Right. Now, if you went into it ignorant and naive of it, that's a different story.
Right.
You know, when you volunteer to be the victim, don't get upset that you then become a victim. You know, a victim mentality is a choice, not true victimhood, but victim mentality, which is different, is a choice. Mm-hmm. You can either be a victim or you can say, no, you don't have that kind of power over me. here's what I'm going to do. I am taking that power back because you should have never had that over me to begin with. I now, by that one choice, survived, and I am now on my path to thriving, which sounds so much better than saying you're a victim of sexism or whatever other ism, which is any sort of ism is just designed to make various kinds of people feel small. Why would you want to feel small? You were born for a reason, so you should feel big. Like Betty Davis said, it scripts in life, it should be larger than life. Mm-hmm. And in wrestling, a lot of people aren't talking about how, even though it's called the Good Old Boys Club, there are women involved with that Good Old Boys Club. And I think that's why a lot of people don't like me, is because I see both sides. You know, when men doing bad things succeed and get rewarded for their bad behavior, that's coming at the expense of good men that are in fact in this business. But then those good men do nothing, and then they settle for the scraps. They don't deserve that, but they made that choice to settle, right? Yeah. Just like there are women that benefit from this status quo, the Good Old Boys Club, but then they want to act like they're completely innocent and devoid of any responsibility. So I think that there should be a conversation about accountability, because yes, women did fight. But if you notice, a lot of women today are acting like this fight only started within the last 10 years.
Yeah, I don't like that. Yeah, I do not.
I can't stand that. I've had Princess Victoria on my podcast. I love her so much. Yeah. You know, she was one half of the first ever WWF Women's Tag Team Champions. Those belts originated back to the NWA, back to, you know, Mildred Burke, for example, in the NWA. Women have been fighting in the professional wrestling industry much longer than the last 10 to 20 years.
I was working with Medusa, Deborah Maselli, in 1995 when she was the only woman on the roster. They had to bring women in from Japan to work for her. She was the only woman in that entire company.
Yes, I honestly, I believe it. I wish I would have been at that age to train at the WCW power plant. Honestly, I would have given almost anything to have been able to train with Paul Orndorff. Seriously, I would have. To me, he is so underrated. His natural masculinity, the way he exudes in the ring, just his training, just his believability. He was a man's man, and he made you believe what he was doing, and he knew how to not take any shit. And pardon my language, like, to me, man, just that is missing. That is missing. Like, I would have given almost anything to have had that sort of training early on in my career. And that's how you know when someone truly wants it. But I don't think people truly understand what that actually means in wrestling, because you said, and I'll try to make this quick because I know not everyone wants to hear me blow air.
I just want to say, hold that thought for a second. I just want to address somebody in the room. RJ Scum, SKUM, is saying, you know, Bull Nakano. Yes, RJ, but she was not on the roster. I mean, Medusa basically had to go to Vince and ask Vince to bring in these opponents just so she had somebody to work. So yeah, I don't want to take away anything from Bull Nakano, but that's how Bull Nakano got her time in the WWE, because Medusa did not have an opponent. Go ahead, Taylor.
Yeah, and that was honestly a very common occurrence at that time. But what I was going to say, what was it? Crap, I felt like it was such a good point.
Oh, darn it. I'm sorry.
Okay, that's what it is. Okay, I'm sorry. I actually just made this point recently on my podcast as well. We can talk all day long about the whole fight that women took to be in this business, right? Because it's the truth. They fought so hard, literal blood, sweat, tears, and broken bones, right? But also, too, I think if we're going to acknowledge that fight for a spot and the right to be recognized of the fact that we can draw on television, which Impact definitely proved, we also have to, I think, shed light on the fact, like, so you have the fight here, but I think you should also draw attention to this side here and realize how much different the path to success is for women in wrestling compared to men. As a woman, when you enter a male-dominated industry, you obviously know that going in, right? But it's so much easier to get noticed as a woman in a male-dominated sport, okay? Yeah. It's so much harder for men to ultimately rise to superstardom, as well as stand out from the masses and masses and masses of men in the business. But with that being said, it's so much easier for a woman to fail, because people are looking for a reason for them to fail, or to discredit them like they have done with Mandy Rose. Oh, she's just a pretty face, yada, 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 which, I mean, yeah, she's pretty. but she can't swallow enough lipstick to make her all of a sudden talented in wrestling to be able to do all those moves. You know what I mean? So how much does the pretty looks actually mean when you can actually back it up in the ring? So at the end of the day, you can't win over everyone. And that is something that women uniquely deal with a little bit more than men in a male-dominated sport. But I think we also should recognize the fact that it is easier for a woman to rise the ranks in the professional wrestling industry, because if you have a line of elephants in the Sahara, right, or wherever you are on safari, and then there's one giraffe, okay, in a line of elephants, you're going to notice that there's one giraffe in a line of elephants. It's that simple. And to me, that is such a unique and amazing opportunity that should not be squandered with women in wrestling, is because you prove that they could draw. You prove that there's women that can go. And you also prove that there are women that can look good while doing it, and that there's actually women who are passionate about it. Yeah. And those are the women that I want to see succeed. I want to see men and women actually succeed, but also show that there's life after, and that the moves aren't everything. It's all the other stuff surrounding the moves that makes a true superstar and a true moneymaker in wrestling. I hope that makes sense to everyone listening.
Yeah,
I'm very passionate.
It absolutely does. I'll tell you what doesn't make sense. I don't know if One Man Army is pulling our leg or what, Taylor, because he says, yeah, it ain't safe, with a $10 donation, by the way. Yeah, it ain't safe, but we're Army combat engineers. Every time I go up to the wire, I had to scream wire 3 times to let the demo team know to come up with the Bangalore torpedo. I hope he's ribbing us. Honestly, I hope he's not involved with torpedoes and live wires. Okay.
Well, if you are, I hope you and everyone is safe.
Yeah. How do I hold on? I'm looking for his thing and I can't find it. Okay. I'll leave it up there. All right. Listen, are you, bro? I was when I was a kid, Taylor, but I have not been for many, 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 many years. Are comic books in your wheelhouse?
Yes. I'm not as avid of a reader right now as I may have been, in prior years, but yes. So that's what drew me to the attention of the Joker and everything going on with him right now. I just thought that was, yeah. So okay, I actually have some comic books myself that I have collected. So
okay, I want to. Jeff Lane smartened me up that I guess in a new issue of the Joker, the Man Who Stopped Laughing, the number 4, Joker is pregnant.
Yes, and there's a lot of back and forth on this, Vince, and I think it's because of the current landscape that we are in right now in our society in America specifically.
Let me explain to people why he's pregnant, because like that was my first question. How did the Joker get pregnant? But
before you do, I think they should also know that this is a non-canonical, which means it's basically fan fiction. It's not an official DC Comics. This was a backstory, so a sub-story kind of fan fiction. That's what basically non-canonical is. Go ahead.
Oh my God, I would have never known that word in a million years. Okay. Written by Matthew Rosenberg and drawn by Francesco Francavilla, issue 4 of the Joker, The Man Who Stopped Laughing, sees the villain confronted by magician heroine Zatanna during his plot to steal Gotham's water supply. Instead of simply catching the Joker, disgusted by his advances, Zatanna cast a spell that would ensure that no one would ever have his baby. Through Zatanna's backward spell, it's in another language. No one else will ever have your baby. Her spell backfires, and the Joker wakes up to discover he is 9 months pregnant. Suddenly going into labor, the Joker vomits with the ejected matter morphing to form a mini Joker. Listen, you are a writer of children's books. Is this the norm in comic books today, or is this just something that's so out there?
Okay, so here are my thoughts on this, Vince, and anybody in this chat can feel free to agree or disagree with me. I will gladly discuss it politely. I'm trying to think of how to say this without being like, you're canceled. Okay, so the fact that this was non-canonical made this a lot easier and more palatable, but I was still kind of like, You know that John C. Reilly gif on Twitter where you're like,
yeah, right. Yeah.
This seemed like something out of the wildest, darkest depths of like the internet wrestling community's brain, but with a fan writer with DC Comics. So the Joker, the original Joker, has been around since about 1940. That's when he first appeared in the Batman comic books. I believe it was Batman #1. So he's been around for legit a hot minute. I mean, he was around about 26 years before Poison Ivy. Just for some, background context, okay, guys? Poison Ivy didn't come around until June of 1966 in Batman 181, which I own somewhere. So the Joker has been around for a very long time. So if you think about the context of how long he's been in the comics, I don't know if I can say with complete earnestness that this is the weirdest thing that's ever happened to the Joker or done by the Joker. I mean, that's a lot of time from 1940 to 2023. But I will say that the Joker being pregnant and giving birth to like a mud monster version of a young Joker was definitely not on my bingo card for this year. I did not foresee that in my crystal ball. It was definitely odd. And what I also found weird is Zatanna around now should be very, very well versed in her magic, which, the spells are spoken backwards, just like her father before her. And so I really feel like her spells at this point should not be backfiring. So I thought that was very, very odd, because to me, I would expect more out of Zatanna. So I don't know if that was just a convenient way to make the Joker pregnant, which was their ultimate end. And I also don't know if I was a pregnant Joker, right? And I magically found myself 9 months pregnant. I know there's not a lot of villains to choose from. However, I don't think Atomic Skull would have been my first choice as an OBGYN. Okay, let me just throw that out there. I don't think, I don't know. And the vision of the Joker pregnant with the Atomic Skull looking at everything like this, it actually reminded me of the first Cannibal Corpse CD I ever owned, where this woman was like getting torn to pieces, delivering birth to all these like demons coming out everywhere. Like, that's what that reminded me of. And it was a Cannibal Corpse, which is like a death metal band. And that's what that reminded me of. So I thought this was a really, really odd twist for DC Comics, because obviously it's fan fiction, but considering all the platforms that talked about it, DC Comics had to be aware of this going to print. You know what I'm saying? It's not like they can conveniently play the deaf, dumb, and stupid card. Like, you had to kind of know.
Yeah.
And I looked at a bunch of accounts, Vince, before this podcast. I looked at a bunch of accounts that were both verified and not verified who were talking about this exact issue. And I can say that they were so polarizing. They were either for Joker being pregnant, saying that men can get pregnant, or they were like, DC Comics, what are you doing? This is the sickest, most weirdest thing you've ever done. This is why people aren't buying comics. Like, the comments were so polarizing. There was no neutral ground that I found whatsoever. Like, everybody was either here or here. Well, it was crazy.
Let me tell you, I am. And this is why, Taylor, I really enjoy this show, because I have no problem, with my age, and you are a lot younger than me. Listen, I watched the very first episode of Batman 66 when I was 5 years old. I remember watching it first run when I was 5 years old. So when I see something like this, my mind immediately goes to Cesar Romero. I am sorry, Nicholson was great. Heath Ledger was off the charts, but Cesar Romero, to me, will always be the Joker. So when I go back that far, I mean, my God, what are we talking, 56 years or whatever we're talking? When I go back that far, it's like, to me, like, this is just a total disrespect to that guy. We should be paying homage, to a Cesar Romero who literally made that role. I could only think, if he were alive today and he was seeing this situation, what would that guy be thinking? And it's not that I'm not open-minded, because I am very open-minded. To me, this is just way beyond being open-minded. Like, this is almost, to me, like reaching for something that like is just not there. And I don't know, is that wrong to look at it that way?
No, because it all comes down to a point of view and an opinion. And I think a lot of times people conflate opinion with fact, and they think the more outraged they are, the more right they must be. But in reality, you can have a difference of opinion and still be respectful about it. To me, this was kind of outlandish, but at the same time, I also understand what's currently going on in politics. So from my question, is this a matter of agenda, or is this literally just outrageous fan fiction? The only people who truly know are the people involved with the actual project. And I think it's worth noting.
If you had to take a guess, what side would you teeter on?
I would say it's more to do with an agenda, as opposed to outlandish fan fiction. But like I said, there's no way for us to actually know unless, somebody comes out and gives honest answers about it. You know what I'm saying? But here's the thing. If you are so against this, right? Not saying you particularly, but a you in generalized statement. If you are one that is so particularly offended by this, talking about it actually gives it more recognition and authenticity and more reason to be like, haha, we told you there was a market for this. And that's what I thought was funny, because there is a different instance of this actually happening where fan fiction became almost as popular as the original. Twilight originally the movie has grossed over $3.2 billion, right? Wow. And fan fiction that was inspired by Twilight was actually the 50 Shades of Grey by E.L. James. And she originally wrote that as fan fiction. It was an ebook on a site similar, I think, to Reddit. I'm not 100% positive on that.
I did not know that.
Yeah, and the 50 Shades of Grey franchise, the movies alone, not including the books, they grossed, I think, what was the thing that I found? They grossed almost to the penny half of what Twilight grossed just in films.
Wow.
So it shows the power of fan fiction, because obviously that, somebody picked that up. I don't know if it was Vantage or Vintage Books, something like that. And then the books came out and then the movies came out. So I'm very curious to see if all the negative and positive reactions, the polarizing reactions to the Joker being pregnant in The Man Who Stopped Laughing, #4, will become a permanent story arc or not. Like, I'm very, very curious to see what they do with that.
Yeah. All right, guys, I want to tell you one more time, feel free to cheer. If you're on Twitch, feel free to, donate a super sticker. If you are on YouTube, we greatly, greatly appreciate that. All right, I'm going to wrap this show up. Before I do, hold on. Very, very important. I got to read an ad, Taylor, but I want you to be a part of this ad, because I suffer from this. I've suffered from this like all my life. Do you have a good night's sleep? Do you sleep?
No.
You don't. You're like me. Are you like up every couple of hours? Like, what are your sleep patterns?
I wake up about 19 times an hour.
Me too,
I had a sleep study. Yeah.
So what do you do? How do you get to sleep eventually? Just keep trying?
Yeah, I'm a pretty resilient person, so try until you succeed, I guess.
Well, I got the solution for you. Here we
go.
Right. Hear me out, Taylor. And this is backed up by two people that you and I know that have their own supplement company, Nick Aldis and Mickey James, and I trust them 1,000,000%. Yes, Mickey James. Mickey James is like a mom to me, and I'm 30 years older than her. Are you having trouble sleeping but always feel tired? It may be time for you to try Recovery PM and see why thousands of customers keep coming back for more. Most over-the-counter sleep aids are just melatonin. The problem with melatonin is if you can't relax and fall asleep in the first place, melatonin's just going to make you irritable. But Recovery PM is a professional blend of 9 clinically proven natural sleep aids and tranquilizers, plus magnesium. So you're going to relax. You're going to experience deep sleep and wake up refreshed and ready to attack the day. Your whole life is affected by a lack of sleep. Your work, your relationships, your mood, your performance. Taylor, cover your ears. Cover your ears for a second. And guys, that includes in the bedroom, the Hey Nanny Nanny. All right, Taylor, you can uncover your ears. Did you know that lack of sleep reduces your testosterone as much as aging 10 years? Bro, that is incredible. Upgrade to Recovery PM for 30 days. You'll be amazed how you feel. Thousands of people have already tried it. 85% of them have come back for more. I know brand members that are using this already, and it's working for them. Recovery PM is available now from recoverypm.com. If you use the code BRAND, all caps, BRAND, you'll get 10% off your entire order. Get the best sleep of your life today at recoverypm.com. Okay, I told you to cover your ears because there was a part about men in the bedroom, and I didn't want to.
I forgot that I'm wearing headphones, so I was just like.
Listen, I'm gonna rapid fire you right now on a couple of things.
Okay.
Rapid fire. We're gonna wrap it up, and then we're gonna talk about your show. We're gonna talk about your books. We're gonna talk about all that stuff. Okay, I am going to limit myself to one television show a week. That's it. I can only watch one television show a week right now. What is that television show?
Well, I watch cartoons to go to bed. So is that all I have to choose from?
What if you were to recommend one thing to somebody, what would it be?
Ooh, one thing. Does it have to be current?
No,
okay.
Not at all. You can see anything on Netflix or the streams. You can see anything. Okay. No.
Okay, I would say True Blood. I just finished that recently, and I'd never seen it before. I just recently watched it while I was recovering from surgery, and I really enjoyed it.
You watched the whole series?
Mm-hmm.
Taylor, I'm a little surprised at that.
Okay.
I'm going to tell you why. I was into that. I thought like the first season was really good. I was watching it every week when it came out. But Taylor, then it started getting into this like orgy, like it really started going to a bizarre place, and I tapped out on that. I'm surprised that you made it through that.
Yes, I mean, I feel like if I can make it through wrestling, I can make it through almost anything. I think season 2 is what you're referring to. After that ending of that season, that doesn't come back.
I couldn't get through it. Through it. That's where it lost me. I couldn't get through
it. The other thing I would say is probably I really enjoyed Grey's Anatomy. Up until the most recent season, I haven't seen the recent season.
Yeah. What is the best last movie you saw?
The best last movie? I think it was Violent Night. Is that what it is? Okay.
Well, see, like to me, like the outside of The Exorcist, maybe Rosemary's, but like there's no good horror film. So every time I hear about a horror film, I've heard a few people say this.
Yeah, I think it's such a good niche market that not many people are taking advantage of, like horror Christmas movies, like Christmas horror movies. And I thought David Harbour as like Saint Nick was awesome. You get like this Viking sort of Nordic backstory to Santa Claus, and Santa Claus, just a brief little synopsis for you. It is not your typical holly jolly rom-com Christmas movie. Now, I'm really into those, even though they all have the same storyline and they end the same. I will watch them. We're either slaying or we're slaying in my house. So basically, you have this film where you have a jolly Saint Nick who is no longer jolly. He is depressed. He hates the state of the world. It's gimme, gimme, gimme. There's no appreciation. There's no kindness. There's no love. It's a season of joy and laughter and giving and family. And he doesn't see that in society anymore. And all he sees is kids wanting stuff. And there's no kindness and empathy and compassion in society anymore. So he's very much like, kind of like Billy Bob and like drinking Santa and bad Santa. And then you have this really just terrible dynamic family, basically. and Santa ends up having to try to save the family, or more importantly, save the girl.
Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah, and then you get like this whole backstory on the origins of Santa Claus before he was Santa Claus, and how he has amends to make up for, and he doesn't really understand the magic of Santa Claus and how it works. And he basically is up against all of these serial killer murderers that are trying to steal the wealth of this wealthy family who has just a terrible family dynamic, and this little girl who still believes in Santa Claus.
Interesting. All right, listen, we got a donation from Trav FDY, but you're gonna have to address this, Taylor. This is none of my business. Go ahead.
I can't read that. It's too small on my screen.
Watching cartoons when she goes to bed is hot. That's what Trav says. It's hot that you watch cartoons. What cartoons do you watch when you go to bed?
I like cartoons where I can just kind of shut my brain off. So I'll mix in like Scooby-Doo, Family Guy, American Dad, or Bob's Burgers. And I just started getting into The Great North or something it's called.
Oh, how does Scooby-Doo make that list? Because Scooby-Doo's old school. The other shows are a little bit more when you were a kid.
Oh yeah, Scooby-Doo is my all-time favorite cartoon. It is something that if I am blessed with children one day, I would want them to grow up on. I love Scooby-Doo. It's some of my favorite memories as a young child.
All right, listen, last topic I want to hit you on the situation with Damar Hamlin, and I want to bring this up because it hits a little bit close to home for me. I'll tell you why. First of all, thank God, bro. The guy's home already.
Yeah.
He's fine. Thank God. Wow. I mean, the entire world was praying for this guy, and thank God everything is okay. But now, hindsight being 2020, the fact that they stopped the game has kind of thrown a monkey wrench into the playoff picture, where now if the Bills and the Chiefs meet in the AFC final, they've got to play on a nobody's going to have the home field advantage. They're going to play the game somewhere else. A lot of people saying they should have never stopped the game. I remember like when it happened, Skip Bayless said they should have never stopped the game, and he got all kinds of heat for that. Yeah, a neutral field they got to play on. They're not going to play in Buffalo, or they're not going to play in Kansas City because they never got to finish this game. Was it the right decision, in your opinion, for them to stop the game?
Yes, I think if you're upset that they stopped the game, like let's look at this objectively and realistically for a second. Would you be good with Damar Hamlin? Would you be good with him dying just so you could have the game where you want it? Like, is that the kind of society we're living in now? Because that could have been a realistic possibility if the medical intervention wasn't so swift. Okay, like this when I say swift, Vince, I'm talking about a matter of minutes. Permanent brain damage and oftentimes death, or in other words, fatality, happen within 4 to 6 minutes of oxygen not getting to a human brain. And that's in an adult, okay? Damar Hamlin is a 24-year-old professional athlete, okay? He has a whole life ahead of him. His parents were live at that game in the crowd. Would you, like, ask yourself, not you personally, but you watching this, ask yourself, and Skip Bayless, ask yourself, like, the home field advantage and heaven forbid a schedule delay, is that really more important than a professional athlete's life? Because cardiac arrest, literally, it takes about 8 minutes or so to die of cardiac arrest if you do not administer CPR. I have a little bit of a medical background, so I am 100% confident in exactly what I'm saying. I grew up around the medical field. I worked in medical records as a teenager, and I am telling you, 8 minutes is not a lot of time. Okay. Yeah. So like, think about how many like tragic wrestling injuries, and there has been so many wrestlers. I'm so passionate about this because it's like, we're not learning. We are not learning. Like, how many people are still doing the stupid crap that Daphne warned us all about before she passed away? This gives me goosebumps. Like, this should not have happened. How many people need to pass away before we decide to do better, to be better, to support better, and to represent better? Like, you understand as a pro athlete that there are certain sacrifices you make, but your life, literally life or death, should never be one of them. Like, let's think about Owen Hart, for example. we don't know for sure, right? Because we can't go back in time. We don't have a DeLorean. But what if the response time would have been different for him? What if they would have stopped everything? What if? We can ponder and discuss the what ifs all day. But my answer is they did the right thing because a 24-year-old did not die in front of his parents and a live crowd plus millions of people watching on television.
Yeah,
that clip would have been on TV and on the internet forever, and his parents would have been haunted by his death on video.
Yeah,
that's not okay.
I always say this, first of all, I definitely agree the game should have been stopped. But I always say this because, of course, in our industry, everybody went back to the Vince McMahon, the Owen Hart thing. First of all, I do want to say this. Upon impact with Owen, his aorta exploded. So there was no recess. Was
it the aorta or was it the left ventricle?
I think it was the aorta. I think.
I'm really glad you brought that up, Vince, because I don't think I'm going to assume that not everyone listening to this knows the actual mechanics of what happened to Damar Hamlin. And I actually think this has happened in different ways to many wrestlers for different reasons, to things like anabolic steroids, for example, and even to a certain extent, some lower grade regular steroids that help with inflammation and autoimmune issues, right? Basically what cardiac arrest is basically a dilated cardiomyopathy, which is just a fancy medical word for the left ventricle in your heart, which is its main responsibility is a chamber that pumps oxygen-rich blood throughout your body, right? And it has a hard time doing its main responsibility, and that takes about 45 seconds, right? To pump blood throughout the average adult body, 45 seconds. Now, with the myopathy, what happens is the wall of the left ventricle, that chamber, starts to get bigger, and it starts to big. So that means the walls of that chamber start to get thinner and thinner and thinner because they have to stretch due to that getting bigger and bigger. And eventually they can't do their job and you result in cardiac arrest. That is what the dilated cardiomyopathy is. That happened to Damar Hamlin. And when you think about how many wrestlers that were on steroids that passed away so young, that really calls into question the medical values and this skewed relationship with steroids, sports, and also just your all-around health, because you don't even have to have steroids to actually have a cardiac myopathy.
Yeah.
And I think back to Test. I think back to so many other people that were gone so soon in wrestling. And so I think that there's a lot that we can learn from example with how the NFL handled Damar Hamlin.
Well, one thing I always want to say, I am always, listen, man, anybody knows my history with Vince, there are a lot of things I have issues with Vince McMahon, but I never had an issue with the decision he made that night. And I will tell you why. And I think that's the difference between what happened in this game. First of all, the show did not continue because of greed and money and everything else like this. I could tell you that. What my feeling is, because I was there, Taylor, no, in a situation like that, when something like that happens, nobody is thinking straight.
No, of course not.
Absolute shock. You are not in your right mind. You're trying to process all of this. And in the middle of all that, one guy needs to make a decision. Obviously, in this situation, there were many people involved in the decision. It wasn't, a spur of the moment decision. It was made over a little bit of time. So I think that was the difference, because like I said, man, I was there that night. I know where my head is, and I am not going to blame Vince McMahon, man, because when you're put in that situation, you're not going to think things through rationally. You're just not capable at that point in time.
Of course, I don't think it was a greed decision at all, but I think a lot of people, as soon as they hear the name Vince McMahon, that's the cliche thing that they throw out. I'm just simply saying, even think back 15 years ago, how little we knew about CTE, for example, compared to what we know now and the new protocols that major companies have now. And the same thing with the NFL. I think this is also something that we can learn from and adapt with in the future to try to elongate the lives as well as the professional careers of pro athletes whose job and livelihood is based on our sole entertainment.
Yeah.
And I think that's where we can learn and do better. So I think this was, the best possible outcome. He was tested neurologically, his heart, his brain, everything. So that's great. And I think that this will also help people, have longer and happier careers. Like, for example, Sasha Banks, finally making her own moves, becoming her own boss, and kind of showing people that she's always going to be who she was at her core of her being, which is Mercedes Monè. Okay. She's always been who she is. She's never played by anyone else's rules but her own. And we're kind of seeing that. Now, what's cool and how these both relate is you're going to see what actually happens when a professional wrestling or just a professional superstar in general gets the opportunity to actually utilize the length of their career instead of it being tragically cut short, or instead of it being manipulated for the agendas of various things. You're going to see what can actually be possible as a professional superstar if given the opportunity to fully expand.
Great point. All right, Taeler, tell everybody about your shows, your books, everything you got going on.
Thank you. Okay, so for any of you that don't know, I'm a podcaster, a part of the amazing brand family for russosbrand.com, coming at you with Channel Attitude. My podcast, Talks with Taeler Hendrix, airs every Tuesday. For less than a large cup of coffee a month, you get so many different podcasts with all kinds of really cool individuals, myself included, Al Snow, Vince Russo, Stevie Ray, Goldilocks, and so many more. What I love about my podcast is it's an opportunity for me to be free with my authenticity, unfiltered, undiluted, completely just who Taeler Hendrix is. We talk about so many different topics. Last couple of weeks, we've gone in depth on the Mandy Rose situation. We talk about things I think you should know before you're 30, fun facts, creepy stories, all kinds of different things, including pop culture every single week, as well as motivation, because I think, motivation and consistency will take you places that nothing else can. And you can catch all of this stuff also on my YouTube channel, youtube.com/Taeler Hendrix. I have Motivation Mondays every week. I do Q&As on there, plus clips of my podcast, so you can kind of get a taste of what you're getting for Talks with Taeler Hendrix. And then I currently have 4 children's books available on Amazon. It's Not Easy Being a Sloth, which made it to the top 100 list for Amazon in the children's action and adventure category. So I am now officially an Amazon top 100 author for the top 100 list.
That is awesome.
My 4th book, The Hopeful Spider, which came out on Halloween of this past year, is almost already at the top 100 position for children's survival stories. I am really proud of my children's books. They are all on Amazon and they all cost, 99 cents. So it really does not break the bank. I wanted it to be accessible to any parent or any adult that wanted to read them, because I think parents and adults can both enjoy them, which was the whole point. There's a lot of inspiration from, things I experienced in life and in wrestling in my children's books, because I used to be a preschool teacher. So I want to help people learn life lessons younger so that they can be the best possible versions of themselves and be the adults they needed as children. When we all make way for our child selves to grow up someday and leave childhood and become the adults that we always needed to be, our own heroes. How
do they get those, Taeler?
Go to amazon.com/ebooks, and you can type in The Hopeful Spider by Taeler Hendrix. You can type in It's Not Easy Being a Sloth by Taeler Hendrix, A Fish is a Wish with Trish by Taeler Hendrix, and of course, Nosy Rosie and The Secret Surprise by Taeler Hendrix. They are all available on amazon.com/ebooks for 99 cents.
And Taeler, did I or did I not read those stories?
You did. I sent you copies.
I loved them. I love the creativity.
So excited.
Yes, I did. I read the stories. I love the creativity. I love the imagination. Well, guys, listen, man, I'm glad you joined us today. We really had a good time. We really had a blast. Thank you guys for all your donations. Of course, guys, follow russosbrand.com, patreon.com/RussoTWC, and Taeler and I will see you right here next week.
Bye, everybody.